YouTube is filled with pro-black imposters. People who sound like they're pro-black, but they're not. They are deceiving and misleading a lot of African-American people, especially African-American men, into supporting Trump. At the end of the day, I want to help you understand why these imposters are so dangerous and harmful to our community. Stay with me. Hello, everybody. I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. And each and every week, we bring you at least one legal analysis of some trending story regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you'll get notification whenever we upload one of our powerful videos. Now, please go to Amazon, grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have a young African-American male in public schools, trust me, you need this book. If your young African-American male is not reading at grade level, register him in our summer reading program. It's called BARS, Black America Reading Strongly. Hopefully we can help you help him increase his grade level over the summer. Hey everyone, I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Recently, I took a look at our analytics and I noticed something shocking. Many of you watch our videos and I believe you enjoy them, but you haven't subscribed yet. What are you waiting for? Again, I was shocked because I know our content is empowering and informative. Plus, our 2024 goal is to have 150,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Please help us by hitting that subscribe button, especially you young folks. We particularly want to increase our number of young subscribers. Thanks for all your continued support. We appreciate it very much. All right, so as I said in the opener, there are a lot of pro-black imposters. Imposters. They're not really pro-black. They're imposters. And they are misleading lots of African-American people to support Trump by either voting the couch or outright voting for him or even voting for a third party. Now, I want to address that in this video. Let me say this up front. For the record, I am not a Democrat nor a Republican. I am an independent voter. I am not a Democratic shield. I receive no compensation from the Democratic Party or any Democrat and wouldn't accept any compensation if anyone offered it to me. I am promoting the Democrats simply because I value democracy and I value civil rights. And Trump, MAGA, Project 2025, and the GOP are all both anti-democracy and anti-black. Pure and simple. That's why I'm promoting Kamala Harris and have strongly endorsed Vice President Harris. That said, YouTube is one of these weird places where everybody is up here saying all sorts of things. And again, it is filled with black people pretending to be pro-black. They sound pro-black, they look pro-black, they dress pro-black, but they're not pro-black. They are imposters. Imposters. Now, what is an imposter? An imposter is someone that assumes a false identity and or title and is solely for the purpose of deceiving and for their personal gain. And there are ways that you can tell imposters from the real deal. So how can you discern whether you're dealing with an imposter or someone who's truly pro-black? I want to give you a few things. First, imposters tell blacks not to vote or to vote the couch, to hurt Democrats until we get reparations. That is not a pro-black stance. That is coming from an imposter. And I'll explain it to you. It's very simple. If we get reparations from the federal, state, or local governments, it will come only through voting the right people into office. That is the only way we will get reparations. Because, as I've said many times, Congress, under the Constitution, Congress, those 535 people in Congress, they control America's purse strings. They control the money. And in order for them to approve reparations, we got to put the right person, right people in office. Does that make sense? I mean, the president cannot just order the country to pay reparations. It must come through Congress, especially the kind of money that we are owed. One Duke economist estimated that it was over $14 trillion. That has to come through Congress. And how are we going to get a Congress that is amenable to giving blacks reparations? The only way is for us to vote the right people in. It will not come any other way. Also, I think people have confused voting the couch with boycotting. Voting the couch is not the same as boycotting. Dr. King and the civil rights movement effectively utilized boycotting in the 50s to send a strong message to white Southerners in Alabama, and it worked. It was very effective. Voting the couch is very different because voting the couch hurts African Americans, not the Democratic Party. When we don't vote, we allow our enemies to come into office and tighten up that rope. Whereas when we boycott someone, that actually does hurt that other party. That keeps money out of their pockets. But voting the couch does the opposite. It hurts us. It is not going to get someone to the table. It is not going to force the Democratic Party to come to the table with reparations. And again, even if the Democratic Party were to agree to reparations, it would still take Congress. That means we would have to get the right people into Congress. So, the first way you know that you're dealing with an imposter and not a pro-black person is they tell you not to vote, or they tell you to vote the couch, or they tell you to vote for Trump. Those are all anti-black positions. They're not pro-black. Number two, imposters tell blacks the Democratic Party has done nothing for or given our community any tangibles. Why do I say such a person who says that is an imposter? Because they're lying to you. That's just a flat out lie. I'm going to show you all the tangibles that the Democratic Party has produced or given African Americans over the last 65, 70 years. And it is a long list. Trust me. But number three, imposters tell African Americans the Democratic Party takes us for granted. That too is not true. And here's my proof. African Americans, especially African American women, are the largest voting bloc in the Democratic Party. And that is power. So much so that when African American women recently voiced strong support for Kamala Harris once Joe Biden dropped out of the race, the Democratic Party had no choice but to support her. And so they started getting behind her after those 1,400 African American women in sororities, etc., voiced support for Kamala Harris. I mean, that was basically the end of it. Now, if only 56.9% of us African Americans continue to vote, in other words, a lot of us don't even vote. So if we continue to vote the couch or not exercise our right to vote, then yes, the Democratic Party can and will and should take us for granted because we're not yielding our power. We're not taking advantage of what the ancestors worked so hard for us to have. So yes, with that low voter turnout, they can take us for granted, but that's not to be assumed because African Americans are really influential in the Democratic Party. In fact, the African American community, you could say, is the face of the party. For example, Barack Obama, former president, is a huge influence in the Democratic Party. So is Kamala Harris. And there are other many black officials in the Democratic Party. Jamie Harris, who is over DNC. And I could go on naming black people who are in key positions, which would prevent the Democratic Party from taking us for granted. Now, again, if we don't vote, if about half of us continue to keep voting, then yes, we're not making them feel our power, and they could take us for granted. So that's the reason why I've said not only should we vote, we should be voting in record numbers so that our power will be felt and so that we can get the right people in place to give us even more tangibles than what the Democratic Party has already given us. All right. Another lie imposters tell us is that blacks faithfully vote for the Democrats because of some emotional obligation to the civil rights movement and because of the sacrifice of life by Dr. King, Medgar Evers, and many others who died for us to have the right to vote. Well, listen, that is a very good reason to vote. I mean, the sacrifices of the ancestors, absolutely. They knew we needed that right to vote. But it's not the only reason that we vote for the Democratic Party. Our votes have been what have gotten us the tangibles in the past. Again, I'll show you that in just a few minutes. So, those reasons that I just discussed, that these pro-black imposters offer for us not to vote or to vote the couch or to vote for Trump or even vote for a third-party candidate, they are simply ridiculous. Or even worse, they're intended to help our enemies. And I say that for several reasons. One, as I said earlier, not voting will only hurt blacks because it allows our enemies to enact more restrictive racist laws. It allows them to pack the courts with more racist judges. It allows them to implement white supremacy in our laws and courts and throughout the country. I mean, that's why we talk about systemic racism. So not voting just basically opens the door for them to go and do whatever it is they want to do. And we know what they want to do. They want to implement anti-black policies. We saw that with Trump. We know that from Project 2025. And oh, by the way, these pro-black imposters, they play down Project 2025 as if it is nothing. We're just making this up. It's just a figment of our imagination. The policy book that the Heritage Foundation created is just something that they just wrote because, give me a break. That is another very strong signal that you're not dealing with a pro-black person, although their skin color is black. This person is an imposter telling you that Project 2025 is not for real. I have gone through many parts of Project 2025, and I've shown you how anti-black, anti-civil rights, anti-democracy that those policies really are. So another reason why those folks telling you not to vote or to vote the couch or to vote for Trump, another reason why it may be a whole lot more sinister than it appears is because the current Democratic Party really has been the only party for the last 65 years that has given blacks tangibles. We have been fighting the Republican Party for many years, especially after that big switch between when the Dixiecrats left the Democratic Party and went over to the GOP. And the progressives in the GOP came over into the Democratic Party. You got to know that this GOP, this Republican Party, is not the party of Lincoln. It is not the party that fought to end slavery. No. This current Republican Party is filled with the Dixiecrats who wanted to enslave blacks, who fought to enslave blacks that were initially in the Democratic Party. But they all left pursuant to the Southern strategy. I've explained that. Go watch that video. All right. So again, it is this current Democratic Party in the last 65 years that has given blacks many tangibles. very important tangibles. And I want to go through a few of them. All right, so specifically in 1964, this Democratic Party, and it was a Democratic president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who signed into law the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, as an attorney, I know how important these civil rights laws are because, let me try to explain it this way. Many of you call our office because you believe your civil rights have been violated. We get multiple calls every day. And as some of you know, lots of those cases we can't take. And part of the reason we can't take those cases is because of the weakening of civil rights laws over the last 40 years or so. The GOP has worked very hard to try to weaken these civil rights laws. Well, why is that important? Because if you feel like your rights have been violated, if you feel like, for example, someone has discriminated against you on the job, we have to find the appropriate law. If we were to take your case, we would have to find the appropriate law to sue on your behalf. We can't just walk into court and say, Your Honor, this person was discriminated against. We just know that it happened. Therefore, that's why we're here. No, we have to cite some law. We have to cite a statute. We have to cite a case. We have to cite some civil rights law that gives you that right. So when you say, I have this right or I have that right, where do you think those rights come from? They come from the Civil Rights Act of 64, of 1968, or 42 U.S.C. Section 1981, or 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, and others. If we don't have those laws, then we don't have those rights, and we cannot go in court and win your case. So don't belittle these civil rights acts. Don't belittle these federal civil rights statutes. Don't belittle civil rights laws, because they are the reasons why we're able to say, no, you cannot legally discriminate against us in that way. So they are very, very, very important. Now, I'm going to run down this list of these tangibles, to use the words that these YouTubers use. I think it's a great word because tangibles are exactly what we should be fighting for. But not only are we fighting to get more tangibles, folks, we're also fighting to keep the tangibles that we already have that came through the Democratic Party, at least in the last 65, 70 years. Now, so the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that was signed into law again by President Lyndon Johnson. All right, Title I protects voting rights. It bars unequal application of voter registration requirements. That prevents states from having one set of registration requirements for African Americans and another one for whites. Okay, that's really important. Title II, public accommodation. This prohibits hotels, motels, restaurants, theaters, and all other such public accommodation from discriminating against us. Without this particular title, you could go to your favorite restaurant and they could have a sign over the door saying, we don't serve blacks. The only reason they're not able to do that is because of Title II of the Civil Rights Act. Are you following me here? Title III of the Civil Rights Act, it prohibits desegregation in public facilities. Now, what I want you to know about Title I, Title II, Title III is they're all tangibles. They are tangibles. This tangible authorizes the Attorney General to file lawsuits to enforce the act. That is very important when these establishments know that the AG, the Department of Justice, will investigate them, file lawsuits, and hold them accountable to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That is very, very, very influential. So that is a tangible. And again, how did this tangible come into fruition? Because of a Democratic president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, which again undermines this notion, undermines it, that the Democrats have done nothing for blacks. That's a lie. You know that you're dealing with a pro-black imposter if they tell you that. Title IV, desegregation of public education. Now, this authorizes the federal government to enforce desegregation in public schools. This is a tangible, and it's really important. Why is it important? Because we went through separate but equal, and it didn't work. We were separate, but it wasn't equal. And so without this particular title, we would be in segregated schools and not getting equal resources as white kids get. That means that every dollar they spend on a white child, they got to spend a dollar on a black child. You see what I'm saying? So thank God for Title IV, which prohibits segregation in public schools. And therefore, our children can have the same quality of education that white children can. All right. Title V, the Civil Rights Commission. This is a federal commission that investigates civil rights issues and makes recommendation to the presidents and to Congress. It is very important that we have a commission that is specifically engaged where civil rights are concerned. Title VI. Title VI deals with non-discrimination and federally assisted programs. So this prohibits discrimination by government agencies that receive federal funds. This is a huge tangible, because those federal agencies know that if they want those federal dollars, they better treat us African Americans with respect. They better do right by us. That is a huge tangible that a Democratic president signed into law. And it's really important, because if they want to continue to get those $10 million grants and $20 million grants and $100 million grants from the federal government, they better not discriminate against African American people. So I am very grateful for Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then Title VII. This created the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. And many of you call us about employment discrimination. It's not an area of the law that we practice, but the reason you have rights as an employee is because of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Again, it is a huge tangible. So they got to treat you like they treat white employees, can't pay you any less, can't work you any more than they do other folks because of Title VII. And then there's Title VIII. And this requires that the federal government keep voting statistics so that we can stay abreast of how voting is going on in this country, so that if discrimination is occurring, we should be able to know and to fix it. Title IX helps us in court because it enables us to move a case from state courts into federal courts, which is really important because a lot of the state judges are racist, because they carry the local prejudices of their community. Their local racist communities are the ones who voted them into office. Whereas if we can get a case in federal court, we have a better chance with a federal judge, because that federal judge should not be filled with all those local prejudices. However, because we didn't turn out in great numbers in 2016, that enabled Trump to pack the court with right-wing federal judges. That was a tangible for our enemies, but it occurred because many of us didn't vote. So much so that Trump thanked black folks for not voting. Now, we'll move from the Civil Rights Act to the Voting Rights Act. Huge tangible, because what whites used to do to keep us from voting was to require that we would have to pay poll taxes, or that we would have to count the beans in a jar, or count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap, or we couldn't take advantage of the grandfather clause, or we had to take literacy tests. Back 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years ago, these things kept record numbers of blacks from voting, despite the 15th Amendment. Well, the Voting Rights Act got rid of all of that and enabled us to vote, so much so we voted in our first black president in 2008. and he was reelected in 2012. The Voting Rights Act has been tremendous. For that reason, the GOP has attacked the Voting Rights Act relentlessly. They have basically gutted it, and they continue to go after the Voting Rights Act because they know it is that statute that has enabled us to get where we are today. Vice President Kamala Harris would not be the vice president. Barack Obama would not have been elected and reelected. Many of the black Congress people would not be elected. Many of the black sheriffs and the black DAs and so forth would not be elected without the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, while I mentioned that, let me mention that one of the reasons why we really need to vote for progressive candidates in November is because we need the enactment of the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill. If we can get progressives in control of the House and the Senate and Kamala Harris voted president, we can get that long-awaited piece of legislation approved by Congress. And then the damage that SCOTUS has done to the Voting Rights Act can be repaired. All right? Now, President Lyndon Johnson also signed into law the Civil Rights Act of 1968. And this was really important because it prohibits discrimination in the sale of, the rental of, and the financing of housing. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of race. It is really, really important because we've dealt with such things as redlining, restrictive covenants, all sorts of things that they have tried to do to keep us out of white neighborhoods where property values tend to be higher. We also have dealt with appraisals coming into our houses when we are trying to sell them and appraising them less because the house has black occupants. Whereas the same house, if white people live in it, is worth $100,000 more. That is literally taking wealth away from the black community. So the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that Lyndon Johnson, a Democratic president, signed into law is another huge tangible. I don't understand why these people are telling you all that the Democratic Party has done nothing. And I mean, they emphasize it, nothing for African Americans. It is a flat out lie. All right. The Fair Sentencing Act of 2010 signed into law by President Barack Obama. This too is a huge tangible. It reduced crack cocaine sentencing from 100 to 1 down to 18 to 1. Big. Again, it too is a huge tangible that was signed into law by President Barack Obama. And by the way, President Obama did so many other things that I've talked about in previous videos. One comes to mind, Obamacare. About 4 million African American people are insured today because of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. 4 million black Americans today can go to the hospital, regardless of any pre-existing conditions, and have insurance. Yet these pro-black imposters pound their hands and say Barack Obama ain't never did nothing for the black community. I mean, that lets you know that these folks are imposters. That's not true. Don't lie to the people. Tell the folks the truth. And then you also have a responsibility, folks, to do your own research and not take the word of these people. Anyway, executive order, I think it's 13583, is another tangible that Barack Obama signed into law, and it promotes diversity and inclusion in the federal workforce. Now, this particular tangible is what Trump attacked when he was in office under their anti-DEI initiatives, right? As well as affirmative action. Those are two big, huge tangibles that we lost under Trump because many African-American men voted the couch. Obama also did My Brother's Keeper. This initiative, too, is an important tangible where it addresses the opportunity gaps for black boys and other young men of color. It's a huge tangible. It was not something that Congress had to approve. It is an executive order that Obama put in place. So he did that as well. And then when we talk about federal judges, Obama put more African-American judges on the federal bench than any president in American history. Joe Biden comes in second place. Now, Biden still got 3 months. He may be able to get even more African-Americans on the bench, the federal bench, which is so very important because the civil rights cases that I'm talking about, where do they go when we file them? Into federal courts. All right? Now, let's talk about some of the tangibles we got under this current Democratic president. Spent a lot. I mean, a whole lot. This president has done a lot for the African-American community. Many, many, many tangibles. For example, the lowest black unemployment in American history. Now, we know Trump loves to claim that the black unemployment rate under his administration was the lowest in history. That is a lie. Joe Biden's policies produced the lowest black unemployment in American history. In American history. It was April of 2023. And by the way, if you do your research, you'll see that Trump inherited a great economy from Obama. And unemployment was going down, 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 down for the African-American community when Trump came into office. He really didn't have to do anything because Obama had put in place policies that turned this nation around economically, because when he came in office, the country was almost bankrupt. And his policies then began to create a lot of jobs, and Trump inherited that good economy that he takes credit for. But again, Joe Biden was the one who did the lowest black unemployment in American history. Also, record SBA loans for black businesses. That is a huge accomplishment, intangible for African-American people. Record HBCU funding under Biden and Harris in the billions. I mean, in the billions of dollars. I am very grateful for the funding that these schools will receive. Schools like my alma maters, A&T State University back in North Carolina, as well as Central, also in North Carolina, but especially the private HBCUs that tend to struggle with fundraising. This money that Biden and Harris put aside for HBCUs is very, very important. And along with that, student loan forgiveness. Biden and Harris put forth policies that forgave a lot of African Americans their student loans. Now, what is the GOP doing? They're fighting it like crazy. I mean, what does that tell you? The GOP is anti-black. MAGA, Trump, Project 2025 are pro-white, not pro-black. That tells you that right there, the fact that they are fighting tooth and nail student loan forgiveness. Tooth and nail. So when a so-called pro-black person tells you that the Democratic Party has done nothing for the African-American community, they are flat out lying. Looking you in your eyes and lying. And I don't care who tells you that. And this stuff is easily verifiable. Now, do you remember when Trump said to blacks, what do you have to lose? Your schools are no good. Your neighborhoods are no good. Basically, you all are no good. So what do you have to lose voting for us? Well, we know now in hindsight, the tangibles that we lost under Trump, and I'm going to mention some of them. The tangibles that we actually lost, voting the couch. I thought we should be voting to get tangibles, not voting the couch to lose tangibles. See, that seems really sinister to me. But anyway, some of the things that we lost during the Trump administration, some tangibles. First of all, Trump reinstated the federal death penalty, which disproportionately caused the death of black men. We know how he mishandled COVID-19, which again disproportionately caused the death of many black men. He banned implicit bias and critical race training. We know that he went against DEI and affirmative action. We know how he responded to racial tensions when the Nazis were marching in Charlottesville. He called them very fine people. We know that his economic policies were, again, a carry-on from the Obama administration, although he claims that he produced all that. The best economy in history. He lied. It was Obama who did that. And also, when he was in office and African Americans were dealing with discrimination in, economics and finances, he didn't come to their rescue. He didn't do anything for Black Americans. Voting rights. We know he supported all kinds of measures that were implemented to interfere with and suppress our votes. All that happened during the Trump administration. Healthcare. As I just said, 4 million African Americans were able to get affordable health care under Obamacare. Well, Trump fought his entire 4 years in office to get rid of Obamacare. And so what would happen for those African Americans who were insured under Obamacare? He didn't care. Environmental justice. The Trump administration rolled back numerous environmental regulations. And now if he gets back in office, he's going to again gut the EPA. Education policy. The Obama administration had created civil rights policies inside the Department of Education to prevent so many young African-American male students from dropping out or being suspended disproportionately, which oftentimes results in them dropping out. Obama put in place policies that were designed to prevent that. Trump got rid of all of that. His Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, got rid of all of those civil rights policies specifically for the Department of Education that Obama had put in place. That is a huge tangible that we lost during the Trump administration. Also, that First Step Act that he loved to talk about. Yes, he signed it into law, but it was a bipartisan bill that he initially opposed. It wasn't until his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Van Jones, convinced him to sign it, that he eventually signed it. But here's the thing. The Department of Justice worked against the First Step Act. And, this is really important, the Department of Justice under Trump, they got rid of all the dissent decrees that Eric Holder and Barack Obama were able to get in place with those police departments around the country that were killing Black people disproportionately. A consent decree is where those departments agree with the Department of Justice to reform their policies to try to reduce the disproportionate killing of African Americans. Trump's DOJ got rid of every one of them and basically said to the police, go and enforce the law with brute force. And we know that if he gets in office, the video I just recently done, we know he intends to give police officers prosecutorial immunity and send them into Black communities. So if this is really about tangibles, if it's truly about tangibles, then Kamala Harris is your only choice. Because when we do anything to help the GOP, MAGA, Trump, Project 2025 get into office, we lose tangibles. We lose them. And we definitely will not get reparations with MAGA and the GOP and Trump and all that crowd in office. So is this really about getting tangibles, or is this more about helping Trump? In other words, are these pro-Black imposters really closeted MAGA supporters? That's sure the way it seems. All right, I'm attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and help share it, help get the word out. Until the next time, peace.